So remember, unit of analysis was the first test, monkey test, for sharpening, specifying the research question. This is the second test. He's Wille Sutton, a very well-known American bank robber. Most of his life he spent in robbing banks. He was famous. Many detectives wanted to catch him, and whenever they were successful in putting him into the court or into the jail, he was so good in making arguments to escape from the case. So, in one of the interesting conversations happened between Wille and one of the priests that were sent to the prison to somehow talk to him, maybe he can become a good person. The priest asks him, why did you rob banks? He answers back, because there is money. So funny is this, when the priest asked, the question was, why did you rob instead of not robbing the banks? The way he sort of twisted the argument was that as if he's asking, why did you rob the bank instead of any other place? So this is the core of a technique which is called contrastive argumentation. If you want to read this paper, I can also post it on the canvas, which outlines the way you can use this contrastive argumentation in crafting your research question. The test, the technique works like this. On top of a page, which I put an example of that working page on Canvas, it's called Contrastive Argumentation Working Sheet, Contrastive Argumentation. You write down your research question on top of, and then you have a table. The first column are the words of your research question, but instead of writing them as a sentence, you write word after word vertically. On the second column, which is the main column, you try to think about alternatives of those words. There I put it verses. And then the final column, you can think if this is the focus of your research question or not. How does it work? Imagine that the question is this: how do low-ranked employees ignore tough requests of their supervisors? If I'm a low-ranked employee and my supervisor asks me a tough task, how can I ignore it? I mean, it's not qualified as a very theory-informed research question, just for this practice. I put how, and then alternatives are what, why, when, whether or not, under which conditions. Low-ranked can be middle-ranked, high-ranked. Employees can be managers, external actors, collaborators. Ignore, instead of ignore, can be comply, oppose, negotiate, perceive. Tough can be easy, moderate, normal, expected, unexpected. Request can be demands, obligations, orders, responsibilities. From, literally, I don't have any alternative for that, because that's just, the language. Their supervisors, or can be others' supervisors. It can be not supervisors, peers, subordinates, or whoever else. So And then you start asking, thinking about these comparisons, you may start wondering, oh, actually, instead of how, I can put when, or I can put under which conditions. Instead of employees, I can actually put, for instance, managers. So this exercise pushes you to go back to your question and the literature and see what are the alternatives of phrasing your research question, which then may not be already answered in the literature or might be a better choice for your research question. If people already talked about how, but they haven't talked about when, then it might be an interesting focus to focus on the when. If they already talked about employees, they didn't talk about the managers. If they already talked about tough tasks, demands, they haven't talked about, for instance, unexpected tasks, that might be. I mean, all these can actually give you alternatives to think about the possibilities of writing a research question. And depending on which one you want to choose as the focus of your own research, is list research more interesting, feasible, then you can tick them and make your actually new version of the research question. But even if you don't change the wording of your research question, this exercise is meant for checking one of these words, these key words in your research question as the contrastive focus. Imagine that in this exercise, with this example, I identify ignore as the contrastive focus. What does it mean? It means that research so far already looked at how do low-ranked employees negotiate, comply, or resist the tough requests of their supervisors. But they haven't looked at the ignoring of the requests. So if I highlight the word ignore in my contrastive argumentation or contrastive test, it means that that is the focus of my research. How do managers of non-profit organizations versus profit organizations think about the adoption of some new technologies? How does platforms evolve in the second phase of development versus the first or the last phase of development? How do early adopters of a technology versus late adopters? So it shows that if I ask you, what is your sharpness? What is your unique differential aspect of your research question? This is the test for you. You say literature already talked about the other versus, but they haven't looked at about this particular part. So my request is this. We don't have time to practice with this exercise. Look at the spreadsheet, the template that I put on the canvas. It's called contrastive argumentation. Go with this exercise on whatever you have. It doesn't matter that you have the latest version of your research question. It's just that you start practicing with that. Experiencing this mental state of thinking about the alternatives is important. Do that exercise, and if you have any questions, come back into the coffee chat or email me, or if you want, anytime we see each other next time.